The spaceport, located in Upham, that's southern New Mexico, is a $209 million public investment, meaning your investment. But even before the first commercial flight by main tenant Virgin Galactic, there's been concern that it might turn into what Senator Mary Kay Papen termed a, quote, weed city, odd quote there, but we get it, if businesses won't commit because they're vulnerable to lawsuits. So, here to orbit this issue, I love saying that, Editor-in-Chief of the New Mexico Law Review, Sophie Martin's back with us. Former state senator and one of our favorites, Dee Dee Feldman, she's back with us as well. Panel regular, one-time New Mexico House Republican Whip Daniel Foley returns a double fist pump, and former state representative, Public Relations Commission candidate Al Park. Al, let me begin with you. This week, Democrats in the House and Senate announced a potential deal that would protect businesses from lawsuits filed by commercial spaceflight passengers. You're an attorney. You have colleagues who hate the idea of protecting someone from liability. What made this palatable to Michael Sanchez and Kenny Martinez, our new Speaker of the House? Because it's interesting, they're both attorneys. So they were in the room negotiating with these trial lawyers. What happened there in your best guess to make this thing come to be?
Well, my guess is what's happened is that, the state of New Mexico made a substantial investment in the spaceport. And what we're seeing is competition coming from around the country and internationally. And I think there was a decision made that before we get left behind, before we even get out of the gate, we need to do things to remain competitive. And what they did is they came to a compromise of a very narrowly crafted, waiver of liability so that they could get the companies in here to continue to make the investment to make sure that the spaceport could be viable for the future of New Mexico.
Let's back up for the viewers just for a quick sec. Stay with you, Al. When we talk about liability and who is liable, so to speak, if you're a Joe citizen, a Mexican citizen, you're on the ground, you get hit by something, your house, whatever, who's protected? How are they protected? Also for the people taking these flights as well.
So the waiver of liability is really specific to the people who are taking the flights. If you're a Joe citizen, you're on the ground, and you have property or you get hit, you still have claims. This is really just limited to the folks who are taking the space flight. The analogy is under the law is sort of the assumption of the risk type of thing, which common law has taken away. But it's really said you can't be immunized now for something that's an inherently dangerous activity.
And just to be clear on this, Sophie, as well, doesn't mean anyone's off the hook here, any of the manufacturers. If there's negligence shown, you will get dinged. You're not fully protected. So with all that said, there's something there, however, that hitched up the trial lawyers. Who would have a problem with this, protecting people?
That was like an 8-part question.
No, I was going for 9.
I'm
sorry.
still working on that. Okay, I think that the important, takeaway is that it is not complete indemnification. It's not complete release from liability. I think that the aspect that protects people on the ground is very common sense, makes a great deal of sense, and I think that is obviously helpful. But to Al's point about, you're going to be doing something, wrestling crocodiles, racing, that crazy race that goes down all over the continent. You're doing something that is so inherently risky that you have to be aware, and then you have to be going with your eyes open. And because of that, there is that release of liability. So if you are thinking about going, that's something that's going to be brought to the forefront. It's not going to be sort of something you're going to take lightly.
Sure. Dee Dee, good to see you again, by the way. So are we free and clear here now? Are we off and running? Is Spaceport going to now flower to its full potential from this one thing alone?
I'm not sure that that's true. They still have to recruit the businesses. And my understanding of the deal was that it was partially just kicking the can down the road for 2 more years, extending the current status quo to the suppliers until 2020 rather than 2018. So it's a partial solution, but I don't think it's a be-all and end-all.
Sure. Dan, good to see you again. It's been a while. Let me ask you this. What your reaction to the press conference that featured every new Democrat, new or otherwise, in our legislature, making a grand announcement about a grand bargain, a grand deal. I didn't see too many Republicans up there. What happened?
It's a shame. I mean, it shows you that the partisan lines are being drawn already. I remember when we did Megan's Law, and we held the press conference until Michael Sanchez and Kenny Martinez came up to be part of the press conference because they were part of passing the law. It's a shame to see that the Democrats are going to jump on this as a political ploy when it could be an opportunity to show them taking the lead and reaching across the aisle and working together, especially when everybody knows that the trial lawyers are not supporters of Republicans, they're not friends of Republicans, they're not people donating money to Republican campaigns. I think they missed a huge opportunity to show the people in New Mexico we're going to take the forefront and being bipartisan. And I think it hurts, but I think at the end of the day, there's going to be many opportunities for either side to show that opportunity, and they should. I can't believe it took this long to come to this compromise. I mean, it just shows you, though, I think that the spaceport, to me, is kind of the tip of the iceberg, that we clearly have a problem when it comes to trial lawyers in New Mexico and the litigation process when it comes to businesses. This isn't the only thing that's preventing businesses from moving to New Mexico.
Interesting. Sophie, your thought there?
The truth of the matter is that New Mexico doesn't have extraordinarily strong consumer protection laws. We're known for being fairly weak in that arena. And this is a situation which I think the trial lawyers stood up and said, like, this is a crazy, risky situation. And to completely strip away folks' ability to recover is a little bit nuts. Beyond that, I think that it's worth noting that while some portions of the electorate may think of this as a trial lawyer's situation, there's another portion that remembers that Governor Martinez was not particularly bullish on this project during the campaign and in the start of her governorship. And so I think, to a certain extent, to Dan's point, there's an opportunity there. How shall I put it? This is already a project that's connected to Democrats in people's minds. And so I'm not entirely surprised that the party would go forward, as Dan has suggested. I don't know if that's really how it played out, but I think that they would be wise to continue to associate that project, at least in the short term, with the Democrats.
Sure. Al, let me read you something, a statement from the governor's office on Tuesday. Protecting the $209 million taxpayer investment in the spaceport by passing a bill preventing lawsuit abuse is one of Governor Martinez's top priorities for the session. The governor met with leaders from Virgin Galactic today and is hopeful that the final legislation that passes will lead to the company's commitment to stay in New Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. The governor has, Sophie mentioned she was a little lukewarm to this early on. She's been strong on the need for it, however, for some time. Why wouldn't Democrats include the governor's office in this? If she's been involved here and she's been really pushing towards getting this done, is it bad politics to not include her at this point?
You know, Gene, I want to really say something to what Dan was talking about. He's like, I'm sorry, he was talking about it took too long to get there. Yes. The truth of the matter is that during the interim and over the summer, committees have been meeting, people have been working on this, and frankly, sometimes, as we all know, you don't get the bills and the legislation worked on until you all get up to Santa Fe and get in the same room. And quite honestly, coming up with a compromise on day 7 of the legislature of 60 days is actually pretty fantastic.
The bill was introduced last year, too. So.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying that, to sit there and say that it's taken them so long to do it is not unheard of. Sometimes legislation takes 2 and 3 times to pass. I think that it's something that we've been working on, and I think that the governor's office was involved. Did they miss an opportunity? Maybe, but I also think that when the legislation, when they got that compromise, there was a lot of excitement, and they rushed straight to the press conference. Did they dot the I's and cross the T's and do the things that they should have? Maybe, maybe not. But it's going to be. I'm hard pressed to actually find fault on day 7 of the legislature when people are working together on something that is very, very important. And you got to remember, and Sophie hit this, and it's exactly right. The spaceport is a Bill Richardson initiative. It's a Bill Richardson vision. When Richardson took over governor, he was all about creating a new Mexico. And you're starting to see that from the rail runner down to the spaceport. And we're still dealing with that legacy. Say what you want about him. And that's a little hard for some Republicans to swallow.
That makes sense. Was an opportunity missed in your eyes?
Well, I think it's a southern New Mexico project.
Yes.
So
Yes.
The credit here goes to Mary Kay Papin, our new pro tem in the Senate. This is the 3rd year, I think, that she sponsored that bill. And now she's gotten some help from the other leaders to finally get it compromised and get it through on day 7. I think that is extraordinary, and it looks like there are a number of compromises coming down the track. I'm hopeful that there are.
We're in a bit of the same range, Sophie, as Colorado and Florida on the law part of this. It's within hailing distance. It's not quite what they have over there.
Yeah.
And so, again, I have to ask, just put on the table in our last minute here, are we free and clear here? Are we finally at a point where spaceport can just be what it's supposed to be?
Oh, God, no. It's a tremendously complicated project with many moving parts. And we've talked about already who will be the additional companies at the table, what will be all of the additional moving pieces. I think there's plenty more to come.
But I think the challenge actually now goes to Virgin Galactic and some of the manufacturers. These guys have said for years that this legislation is the stumbling block. It's now time for them to put their money where their
You're
mouth
getting
is.
right why I asked that
Absolutely.
question. Exactly. Your thought on that, Dan?
Oh, I just, I think Al's right. This is a Bill Richardson legacy, like the train, and we will be living this legacy for many, many years, decades to come. If it works, great. I think at the end of the day that Governor Martinez wasn't happy with the spending of this kind of money, but the proverbial horse was out of the barn. I mean, when she became governor, was she just going to stop the final construction on it? Right. So I think that this just highlights that there's a more systematic problem with businesses in New Mexico. And I think it also, we've spent a whole segment here really talking about the power the trial lawyers have in the legislature. I mean, one group, the trial lawyers in New Mexico, were able to hold up a $1 billion multinational corporation until year 3, when they finally decided to come to a compromise. I think the people, the viewers, should realize, I mean, that's a lot of power for one group in the state of New Mexico that really only represents a very small constituency. That's problematic
Sure.
for the way this works.
Dee Dee, we got just a little bit of time left. Would you agree with that? That's an interesting point. I've heard others say the same thing Dan just said. How could one group hold up something so impactful for an entire state for 3 years? Or is that just politics?
Oh, it is just politics, and there are many groups in the special interest within the New Mexico
And we're gonna get to some of
legislature.
them.
Some are corporations, some are lawyers, and it's not unheard of, for the pharmaceutical companies to hold up something for a huge amount of
NRA?
time, or the NRA, yeah.
We're getting there. Congrats to everybody. It happened. A lot of folks thought this wouldn't happen, so there you go. We'll be back in a few minutes talking about gun ownership and gun control.